When we think of Woodstock, names like Hendrix, Joplin, Cocker, and Santana immediately come to mind. But long before the first notes poured out across the crowd of 500,000, four young men met in New York City and formed a fledgling company appropriately named Woodstock Ventures. John Roberts, Joel Rosenman, Michael Lang, and Artie Kornfeld quickly assembled a core group of the finest production talent on either coast and set in motion plans to produce a festival that would eclipse all those that had come before it. In the 9 months leading up to the festival, tens of thousands of man-hours would be needed to plan and build the site. $3 million would be spent on everything from musicians to porta-johns. Legal battles would be fought and lost. And a farmer named Max Yasgur would step forward and rescue a dying dream.
Don't y'all fade away.
Yeah, my recollection, although it's probably embellished over the years, is of Artie perched on the end of his desk, about to fly off into the room. He was a very delightful character, as I recall, Artie. At our first meeting, we sort of became friends instantly.
I was standing on my desk, smoking a little hash. Okay, I said that? Well, it's over 7 years ago. And my secretary said, there's someone out here to see you named Michael Lang. And he said, you don't know him, but he's from the neighborhood, Bensonhurst, and he'd like just a minute of your time. So I said, send him in.
And I had done a festival in Miami called the Miami Pop Festival the year before I moved up to New York. And we would talk about that. Artie was very curious about that, and we talked about that, at length several times. And when we began really getting into seriously discussing this concert series, one evening we sort of put it all together and said, why don't we do this big festival, and maybe that'll kick off the studio and start this whole music express here. And to the best of my recollection, that's how it came about.
We'll never know how the festival came around. I can tell you what was in my mind. I can tell you what was said and done, because I know those things. But I can't tell you what was in Michael's mind or Artie's mind or John Morris's mind.
Joel and I were building a recording studio in Manhattan in the summer of 1968. And we met a lawyer at that time named Miles Lurie. And Miles called us up, I guess, maybe February of 1969, and said that he had a couple of clients who were interested in building a recording studio in Woodstock, New York. And he wondered if we would sit and talk with them about their project and share with them our experience in doing such a project here in the city. And we said, sure. And so Mike Lang and Artie Kornfeld showed up one morning in February to talk about building a recording studio in Woodstock.
They didn't seem likely at that first meeting. We didn't leave that meeting thinking that these guys were really interested in doing this, but they did seem intrigued, at least tickled.
What happened was we were given a proposal for a recording studio. They had plans for the recording studio, they had rough sketches, they had a budget for the recording studio, they had the recording studio project. The thing that caught my eye was one sentence. There's even a chance, this proposal read, that we can get some of the local talent to perform. And the local talent was Bob Dylan, and maybe Janis Joplin and Tim Hardin and John Sebastian. I thought, wow, we could make a fortune here. We'll have this huge concert. And so we came back to Michael and Artie with that suggestion. We don't like this recording studio project, but we think this is very exciting if we turn it into a festival idea. And we actually had to go round and round. We said, we drew the line of doing another studio. They drew the line of doing a festival, and eventually we suggested, how about if we do a festival, and then with the profits from the rock and roll festival, we'll finance the recording studio. And we struck a deal on that basis. It was a compromise.
With plans for a festival now firmly in place, Lang contacted Stan Goldstein, who he had worked with at Miami Pop. Goldstein agreed to help and suggested they offer the position of Director of Operations to Mel Lawrence, who had helped produce such West Coast festivals as Magic Mountain, Newport Pop, and the legendary Monterey Pop Festival.
As soon as
we began talking about staffing, it seemed to me that Mel was an ideal guy to have involved, and so I chased him down. And took me all of perhaps 10 seconds to convince him to at least discover whether there was something to do.
And I get a call from Stan Goldstein. And Stan said, they're planning to do a number in New York. Are you interested? And I said I was. And he said, you know, you've got to do this, because this is going to be really a big one.
My first recognition of something was in the wind was not even knowing I was going to be there, but hearing it on the news. About 7 months, 8 months before Woodstock, the news was going, oh, somebody on the East Coast is going to try to do a festival like Monterey Pop Festival. And everybody's ear went ding like this to the airwaves, because we were into celebrating our sense of being together.
Word of the festival was slowly making its way through the underground, eventually finding a home at New York's Fillmore East.
I'd left Fillmore East, and I'd worked on a couple of small projects. And one day, Chip, Bert Cohen, and a couple of other people came and saw me in my house and started talking about this project and what it was going to be. And I was sitting there thinking, oh, this is never going to happen. You know, and they came back within a week and said, this is what we're doing. We're going to go ahead and do this big festival. We're going to try to do an East Coast version of Monterey. And it's going to be 3 days. It's going to be in Woodstock. It's going to be da-da-da-da-da. We need your help. Do you want to do it? There was one answer. That was, yeah, sure, please, you know, let me, yeah.
Our first choice was a piece of land in Saugerties, New York. 700 acres, right off the exit 18 of the thruway. Absolutely beautiful, gently sloping land.
We met with the owner, a fellow named Schaller, shortly after that to start hammering out a lease. And we didn't even get to hammer any little one bit of that lease before Mr. Schaller told us that he had no interest in renting to long hairs. So I think we were getting a little desperate about real estate, John and I. And at a certain point we jumped in our car and just started roaming around. I think we got off the Quickway and saw a sign saying property and real estate for rent or sale or whatever, inquire, and we inquired.
And the Mills property was the second or third place we came to, and it was appropriate. It wasn't great, but it had the virtue of being owned by someone who was willing to rent it to us.
Mills property was a move of desperation. It was nothing like what I wanted. I wanted someplace that felt natural and open and free, and Mills property was land that had been misused, chopped up, and Mel's job was to make it right again.
Having to settle for a less than perfect site was not the only problem facing the producers. There was still no real evidence the festival was actually going to happen, and booking bands became a serious concern.
A lot of people were getting cold feet because they'd heard that the festival site had been shifted. They heard that there were problems. There were rumblings in the press that things weren't going well, that the construction on the festival was lagging behind. It was all true, and nobody really knew what was going to happen.
Mountain's first gig was the Fillmore West. The Whiskey Go Go, the Fillmore West, and then Woodstock. And our agent was a guy named Ron Terry, Jimi Hendrix's agent. And I remember seeing posters out in San Francisco that we were going to do it. And I saw our name on there, and it was pretty exciting. Nobody knew what to expect.
Bill Lauder from the Jefferson Airplane called me and said, Bill, those roads are really small, man. I mean, like, how are we going to get there? So, well, you just get to Liberty and we'll take it from there. And so, you know, they were going to show up, but there was this sort of apprehension.
See me, feel me, touch me, heal me.
The Who had turned us down. We'd kept after him and after him after him. They'd turned us down. And Frank Barcelona, who runs Premier Talent, finally said, okay, there's only one way to do this. And we had Pete Townsend to dinner at Frank's apartment.
See me,
And we got Peter up there. We fed him a spaghetti dinner. We chatted, we talked. We started pouring wine in him and pouring wine in ourselves. Peter just kept saying, no, no, we don't want to do it. We want to do tango, wouldn't go home. And at about 5 o'clock in the morning, Peter is sitting down in the corner, all scrunched up like this, saying, all right, I'll play the thing. Can I go to sleep, please? We wore him down and tricked him into it. They published on the Live at Leeds album, if you look in the album, the contract from Woodstock's on it.
listening to you. I get music, gazing at you. I get me following you. I climb a mountain. I get excitement at your feet. Right behind you.
Though Howard Mills was willing to rent his land, Wallkill residents were not, and opposition rose quickly. The town, which had initially welcomed them, became concerned as the spring and summer of 1969 wore on, that this music festival was going to be a major disruption.
When I think of that period of time, I think of the movie Easy Rider and this sense of this us versus them. And my sense was that these were not people you could reason with.
As opposition began to grow from something called the Concerned Citizens Committee, which we took to calling the KKK, we realized that this could not, this is something we really had to take seriously.
It's difficult to determine how this came together. I don't think that anybody said that watch out for the redcoats, the British are coming. It was something that just evolved over a period of time of attending some meetings, having discussions amongst ourselves.
And the more we worked there, the more organized the community became in terms of stopping us. And it became a political thing and it became a legal thing. But the politics and the legalities were rooted in a sociological phenomenon, which was fear and hatred of hippies. They were easily identifiable, both by their smell and hair, according to the people of Wallkill. And they smoked pot, took other drugs. They were unruly, they listened to real loud music, and you had to be really careful about your young daughters, which became a real big point against us. These hordes of hippies will be coming in and taking advantage of our daughters. And I knew that was absolutely true.
Well, as the issue of whether or not there should be a music festival in the town of Wallkill, our only experience had been what had happened in California, and there was some violence and there were some drugs and so on and so forth, and I think that we didn't feel that Wallkill was the place.
What got us at Wallkill was a growing realization on the part of the town, and specifically the zoning board, that 50,000 was a vast understatement compared to what was likely to show up. In fact, they may have known before we did.
since we had experience, or rather I had all this experience dealing with local people in the various places in California and Miami, I just like field the question and throw it right back. That's covered, that's covered, that's covered. Everything was covered, you know, and I guess it was convincing enough because a lot of those meetings ended with a lot of shaking the hand and, gee, we didn't know you knew about this kind of stuff. But then when they'd go back, they'd say like, wait a second, this is all too nice, you know? And I think they went to bed that night and said to their wife, I don't know about that guy, or I don't know about those guys, no matter what they say.
I can remember going to one town meeting there where Michael Lang, who had very long hair in those days, stood up to talk, and you know, there were cat calls because he had long hair, and some guy would say, is that Miss Lang or is that Mr. Lang? That sort of thing.
At some magic moment when Jack Schlosser, the town supervisor, suddenly began to take sides, I lost my temper, and there was a certain amount of shouting going on back and forth, and the meeting came rapidly to a close.
Opposition to the festival was so great that on June 26, 1969, 2 months before the festival was to begin, Wallkill's town board, under the scrutiny of the Concerned Citizens Committee, drafted and passed Local Law Number 1, restricting gatherings of 5,000 or more.
Well, we felt about the only organization that could comply with these laws would be a monastery whose members had taken a vow of silence. This law was designed, not very artfully, but very effectively, to preclude us having a festival there. If you have a law that says no noise can emanate more than 10 feet from the property line, you pretty much have foreclosed children playing in the backyard or anything else, let alone amplified rock concerts.
When you read it, you understood that almost no gathering of any size would be permitted. It was essentially precluded anything that we had in mind. Phrases like ex post facto sprang to mind from my legal training, but I had a hunch we didn't have much of a case here, at least not in a practical sense.
We certainly felt that what they had done was wrong, and if we had 10 years and $10 million, we might get this before the Supreme Court, but that if we wanted to have a festival, that we better look elsewhere.
I was one of the last to admit that we were really, really dead. I thought, in fact, that we had reasonable grounds and ought to try to stay there rather than just abandon it. However, that wasn't part of anyone else's idea of the right thing to do. So folks scattered looking for sites.
Shortly after their eviction from Wallkill, Stan Goldstein got a call from Elliot Tiber, owner of the El Monaco Motel in White Lake, New York. Elliot had read about what had happened in Wallkill and invited the producers to look at a piece of land behind his motel. The property proved to be unusable, but the next day, Mel and Michael met with a Sullivan County real estate broker who said he knew a farmer who might be willing to rent his land.
The piece that he showed first was this huge field, but flat as a board. I look at Michael and I say, wow, 100,000 people, they're not going to see anything.
And we said, no, this will never work, and we were starting to head back to the car, and the real estate agent, and Mel said to me, or I said to Mel, I don't remember how it came about, since we're here, why don't we look around and see if there's anything in the area that will work, and we went for a ride with the real estate agent. And we came down Herd Road and came up over the crest, and there was the bowl. And we knew immediately this was our new home, somehow. And Max and I walked out into the field and made a deal.
I'm sure that what went through his mind was, hey, I don't have these prejudices. I don't mind kids on my property. I don't mind a rock and roll festival. I think that'd be fun.
The Yasgurs were decent, gentle, caring people. They came to our rescue. There would have been no Woodstock without Max and Miriam Yasgur.
Our Arnie Skolnick, who did the poster in the end, had done a logo for me for a hotel that I'd built with a couple of other friends in the islands. And Arnie couldn't come up with an idea, and his, I guess, then 3 or 4-year-old daughter was playing on the floor with construction material and a pair of those little blunt scissors that you always played with, and she was cutting things out. And he watched his kid, and he suddenly went, oh, and he picked up her construction paper, her little blunt nose knife, and he cut out the bird, and he cut out the arm of the guitar and the whole thing, and he just pasted it on a board, and that whole thing was done that way. And he walked in the next day and said, here. And we all went, wow. And that was the poster. Total accident.
We had one huge problem. We'd sold about $1 million worth of tickets for Wallkill. So we had to make sure that everybody knew that anyone who had bought tickets for Wallkill, those tickets would be honored in White Lake.
I didn't like the ad. It just struck me that an ad featuring two obvious rednecks with blunderbusses, I guess they look like it. Is that right? I seem to remember these sort of caricature shotguns. And I think a little corn liquor on the side and a jug and some kind of moonshine. In an obviously intolerant way, because they had evicted us from our rightful site up in Wallkill. It went over the line for me in terms of the anger and the confrontation element in it. I just didn't want anything like that associated with the festival. I was outvoted. And in retrospect, I'm not sure I was right.
But White Lake presented its own unique problems. The Mills property had the advantage of being a quarter mile from Route 17, where water and power were readily available. By contrast, the Yasgur farm was literally in the middle of nowhere.
The Yasgur site was just gorgeous. It was just head and shoulders for sheer beauty. So much better than the Mills site. It was as though it had been designed for the job, except that there were no roads, there was no water. We had to dig wells, we had to bring in power. Power had existed at the other place, so suddenly utilities became an enormous undertaking, whereas previously utilities had been a very small, simple consideration. We had to lay roads, enormous roads, prepare road beds and so forth. And all of that working around Max's harvest schedule and milking schedule. Electricity didn't get there till the last moment. Telephones didn't get there till the very last moment. And so it was a haul every last minute of the time.
I felt that if we were going to do a project like this, that we needed a technical director like Langhart who could just deal with anybody he had to deal with, from engineers and from government people to just hiring people off the street and turning them into carpenters or electricians or whatever it was.
We're standing on West Shore Road looking towards Bethel at about where the bridge was overhead. And over this way was Filipinis Pond. Coming back through this way, then you come to the heliport, and then further down in that low spot where the office trailers, where my office was, and the payroll office where the people gathered in the morning to discern which tasks they were going to have. Over here is the stage. There's this kind of flat place here, and then the hill rises up, and then there's a kind of a dip, and then it goes on again. And so the stage was quite high compared to modern concerts, because you have a situation where if it wasn't, then everybody that was caught in the dip wouldn't be able to see the performers. So we had no option here except to make the stage real high so that the people who were down front were looking up and the people further out were looking across and the people from the top were looking down. Continuing across there at the top were the concession stands. Over here we had the Indian Pavilion and the campgrounds, the forest trails, and then further over this way was the playground area and the camp kitchen with the hog farm.
I asked for $3,000 from the festival to buy the food. And when I went to town, within a day and a half, I'd spent $3,000. I ended up buying 160,000 paper plates, forks, knives, and spoons, and about 30,000 paper cups. And it's a good thing I did, because they all went. Everything went. So that's how I figured that we fed between 160,000 to 190,000 people at the Hog Farm Free Kitchen.
It rained 21 days out of the 23 we had to prepare. And so our focus was getting the essentials done. The essentials were the stage, the water, the food, sanitation, getting as much of that in place as we could. We got the fences put up, that was not priority initially. Maybe it should have been, but it wasn't.
At some point we had a choice, really. We could build the stage or we could build the gates. And we tried to do both, but when it came down to the last week, we realized we couldn't do both. There wasn't enough time.
Coming in from London from over the pole, flying in a big airliner, chicken flying everywhere around the plane. Could we ever feel much finer?
They got up Friday morning, and this whole road that you see vacant now, all the way up through, cars, people, jammed, just one lane going all the way up to the site.
I realized it was going to be bigger than life when the campers started to arrive a week early. And we looked out onto the fields behind the main field, and there were tents and buses and sleeping bags all over the mountains. And we said, well, if this is just a week before the event, I wonder what the event's going to be like.
And there was a bunch of state cops on the helicopter with us. And they were just talking to each other and talking to us, and we were just sitting there like wondering what's going on and how come we got to fly in here. And we heard that the roads had been clogged with people and cars and abandoned vehicles of all kinds. And then I remember just looking out, because the door was open or something like that, and you could just look right out there. And it was an amazing thing. You know, when you look at all the pictures from all the aerial shots of Woodstock, you see the fields completely filled with people. But that was a tiny, tiny part of where the people were. There was people for a long time that we were flying. There was people underneath every leaf of every tree and every rock that we was flying over.
You got to remember that everything changed instantly. As the sun came up on Friday, we had planned this concert that we thought was going to draw 50, 75 people. But this thing, bam, suddenly we're just, you know, there are 500,000, 600,000 people in the field. There's another 1.5 million people physically trying to get in. We're jumping to hiring helicopters. We're desperate to keep water moving, the rest of it. I mean, we had a whole different thing from this laid-back concert festival that we're just going to have, and it'll all be gone. And we're suddenly in the city management business.
The phone rang in this production office, and someone hands me the phone and says, it's Stephen Stills. They really didn't want to do this show because there were going to be too many people, nobody's going to know who they were really unsure themselves. And right about that time, for some weird reason, Hanley was testing the sound system, and one of the very popular records that everybody was playing that summer was the Crosby, Stills and Nash first album, and Sweet Judy Blue Eyes. It's blaring over the sound system. I stick the phone out the window and I told Stephen, okay, Stephen, they're playing the song, everybody knows it, you should come. So he yells at Crosby, Crosby, they're playing Sweet Judy Blue Eyes. And I said, we'll be there.
Said and done and felt about each other. If they'd have mercy.
Flying up there, we saw nice trees and mountains and grass and everything. And all of a sudden, there was all these people. How the heck did they get there? You know, it looked like a close encounter. And we landed behind the stage. Helicopters took off, went away. And I was alone there. Felix got up there and he introduced me to John Sebastian. He was tie-dyeing everything in sight. Somebody walked by and they got ripped into their tent and they came out with all kinds of colors on them. I think he was tripping his nut off. That I know for sure. And he was enjoying himself.
There's a really funny story that not many people know about, but there was a gentleman from the New York State Health Department who was supposed to come and inspect the health facilities on Friday. And this guy came directly to my office, and I was to send one of the people that worked for me around with him to show him the Johns, the hospital setup, the water treatment, all the kinds of things that, you know, all the things that they were concerned about. He came with his daughter, who was about 15 years old. And while we were talking in the trailer, my office, his daughter went outside and disappeared. Why? I'll never know. But that guy spent the next 3 days looking for his daughter. He never inspected the health facilities, which he could have shut us down. And, you know, I don't know what happened to the daughter, but she may have saved the whole festival, you know?
It's funny to think about Woodstock as having been a free festival, when from my point of view, it was so expensive. It cost us $3 million, and by us I mean John and myself.
The audience made it a free festival by being there. I mean, there was no way we were getting that crowd out of that field and bring them back in through gates that didn't exist.
There's a whole group of people standing and talking. It's Michael and Artie and probably Stan and myself. And it was like, what do we do? And Artie made this suggestion, which I have never figured out. Why don't we do like they do in the Catholic Church and get girls in diaphanous gowns and give them collection baskets, and we'll send them out in the audience and they can get the money, because otherwise we're not going to get any money. And if you look at the film, you can see me walk away from the group and throw my hands in the air like, oh no, now I've heard everything.
I thought it was a good idea. I was a little spaced at the time. I was hanging with Garcia and Hart for about 7 hours, and I wasn't quite my normal self. You know, I said, let's pass a hat.
What then happened was I went to the office, sat down, picked up the phone, called John and Joel in the White Lake office. They were still outside dealing with all the outside stuff, and said, look, I mean, the obvious is the obvious. There are vast numbers of people in that field. There is no way we are going to move them out of that field. It's a free concert, and I think that we would set a tone by going up on stage and announcing the obvious. So I walked on stage and told everybody what they already knew.
It's a free concert from now on. That doesn't mean that anything goes. What that means is we're going to put the music up here for free.
So it's kind of amusing to hear that it was a free festival any more than it would be free if I gave your camera to somebody, your TV camera. It's free to them, but it sure wasn't free to you.
We suddenly realized that we did not have any way to get any artists in, that they were in the hotels that they checked in, but the roads were totally jammed.
We can't get through that way for the time being. So what they're going to do is they're going to try and raise the gig and get helicopters. They come over here to this field and pick us up and hop us over to the gig, and we'll leave the cars essentially here.
My manager came up to me and said, Leslie, whatever you do, don't stay all together, because they need groups to go on. And if they see all you guys together, they're going to get you on. You know, I didn't want to go on at 4 in the afternoon. So I stayed in one area and Felix was in another. And it worked out.
I wanted to go and just hang out. And because I was just hanging out, I felt free to indulge in some substance abuse. And I mean, nothing big, but you know. And so I was standing around just admiring the colors and all the people. And all of a sudden, this guy comes up to me and says, "You gotta play." I said, "What?" "Yeah, you gotta play, man. You gotta play now." I'm going, "Now? Now I gotta play? I'm not ready to play now, man. I can't play now. I can't walk now." You know, and it was like, I couldn't believe it. And so there was this sort of tinge of like, uh-oh.
It dawned on me that there wasn't anybody else there to go on but me. And they started to come at me, you know, like, "Richie, would you go on?" You know, I'm saying to myself, "Oh no, this thing is about 2 hours and 50 minutes late, and people are going to throw beer cans at me, and I'm freaking out," you know. So the minute I got up there, I knew that it was okay because they wanted something to happen, period. You know what I mean? And it was wonderful to start off and do the set, you know, and 2 hours and something later, I start walking off the stage. And they go, "Go back, there's nobody here yet." And I'm going, "Oh no," and I go back on the stage 6 times, I think, you know, and I'm saying to myself, "Oh, come on, guys, you know, what am I gonna sing the next time I go?" You know, I don't even know what I'm gonna do.
It was comical because you figured he's done, let's see who's next. And Richie came out again, you know. Well, then he'd go off and it was like, let's see again. No, here comes Richie Havens again. Yeah, and you know, and there weren't announcements, you know, indicating this. It was just, you waited and he came back and he came back and he came back.
So I started strumming the guitar and I started tuning it at the same time because it was out of tune. So once I started strumming it, I really didn't know what I was going to sing. I didn't know what, I was fishing. I really was. I was fishing for some song to come to me. And they began to clap, you know, the audience began to clap. And I just started singing Freedom because that was what was running through my mind at the time. I just started singing Freedom.
Freedom, 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 freedom. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child.
And then all of a sudden, Motherless Child came out, which was a song I hadn't sung in about 4 years, or maybe even 5 years. I used to do it in the coffee house. I hadn't done it in 5 years. It came out.
From my home, yeah.
But I remember when he finally went off, that the entire outfit that he was wearing was just drenched in sweat.
The idea was that the first day would be a folky, light type day. That the second day would be more of an English, stronger type thing, and that the third day would be the American strength. I mean, because don't forget, you had the English acts were major factor at that point, and then there were the California, San Francisco, and the rest of it.
In the late 60s, rock stars were often treated as royalty. Proof of this could be seen by what was happening backstage compared to what was going on in the audience.
It was a very lavish performer's tent, if I seem to recall. It was a big open area made out of poles with a big tenting over it. And it was a large area with rows of tables. And seated at this one table was Grace Slick and Janis Joplin, both kind of like turning around to each other and picking at this food, saying that the strawberries were already melting. And I sat there and said, wait a minute, thinking to myself, there are people out there who don't have water. And I just thought that was just a bit bizarre.
And sometime, maybe it was around 1 in the morning on Friday morning, Joel and I decided to take a ride to visit the parking areas. And we stopped our bikes, and I can remember just looking out over the hills towards where the festival site was, and all you could see were campfires at that hour. And Joel and I just sort of looked at each other with this look, that great expression that Keats has, you know, with a look of wild surmise. What does all this mean for us, and what will the morrow bring? And then we went back to the rest of our lives, but it was really a a wonderful still moment there, which I'll always remember.
Bill came to me and said, Sly's not ready to go on yet, man. He doesn't feel the vibes. Well, by this point, I didn't feel the vibes either. And so I went to the trailer and got by Sly's manager and asked Sly to come down to his tour bus, down the steps of the tour bus. And he came down this tour bus, and I reached up and I grabbed him and I slammed him up against the thing and I lifted him up in the air and I said, you lowlife, if you're not on the stage in 3 minutes, I'm gonna take your head off your goddamn shoulder, and dropped him. And he just looked at me and his eyes were the size of basketballs and he walked to the trailer and he said, we're on. And they went on and they did a fabulous show.
Woodstock was indeed the touchstone of a generation, but it was first and foremost a business venture. That fact became all too clear when the Grateful Dead and The Who refused to play until they got paid in cash.
If The Who don't get paid, The Who aren't going on. So I picked up the phone and called John Roberts. About the time that I'd ascertained that this was serious and I wasn't going to be able to talk my way out of it. And I said, John, I need The Who's money. And he said, oh yeah, great, fine. What do you want me to do about it? And I said, get the bank open. And John actually did. John got the bank officer out of bed in the middle of the night. And he went to the bank and opened, got into the bank and got enough cash to get to somebody, to put on a motorcycle, to bring to me, to give to the band so that the band could get the money to go on the stage.
The summertime.
The Grateful Dead wanted a do-over. For some reason, I remember them coming off complaining about something, and they wanted to go back on. And this is a little new to me. I didn't know if you were allowed to do that.
Jerry really doesn't like his performance at Woodstock. I don't know whether it's because he didn't play well, or whether he just has mixed memories of it. It would be interesting to ask Deadheads what they think of Woodstock, since I'm sure they have a tape of it. They have a tape of everything else. I always thought that Leslie West and Felix Pappalardi and Mountain was a fairly decent power trio. They were moving in the direction that other people later moved in and filled up in other ways.
For nobody knowing who in the hell we were, we really got a good spot. I think we went on Saturday night just before the lights took effect. It was around dusk. We used sun amplifiers. And Felix used 4 stacks with 4 12s in each. And I used 4 stacks. He had 15s, I had 12s. But when I did my solo, all of a sudden, I heard the whole stage turn on. My road manager hooked me into his stacks, and it scared me. It's like the wind from the sound. Sound is just the movement of air. And these speakers were pumping, and I felt a gust of wind push me. I turned around, I said, wow, he turned them all on. And then I was off now. You could hear me.
Woodstock and rain, Woodstock and rain, Woodstock and rain. They're all the same thing in my mind. The thunderstorm, tornado, whatever it was that blew through when Cocker was performing, scared the living daylights out of us. A whole bunch of things happened at one time. The towers, which were scaffolding towers, had 4 or 6 Super Trooper follow spots, which weigh somewhere 500-600 pounds apiece, on top of them. And because of the wind, the damn things were swaying. And those follow spots were moving back and forth, and they were not chained down. And all of a sudden, I've got this mic, and I'm saying, move away from the towers, it'll be okay, everybody just hang on, you know, we're gonna ride this through, we've been through everything else. And down on one knee in front of me, shoving a camera lens up at me, was Michael Wadley. Total disregard for anything happening to him. He's right there in the thing. Somebody had to relay, somebody had to talk to all of those people.
And then I remember the sun came out and there was this incredible stench that came. You remember that? There was this stench. And it was very uncomfortable for people. There was debris all over and everything, and people were covered in mud. And all of a sudden, the mud became an activity.
I didn't see hippies married in mud. I saw it rained and there was a lot of mud and people having a good time.
And the light at that point was down in the sky, and the clouds were overhead, and it was everybody was silhouetted. So when you look, you know, you see the people up close. You were all kind of backlighted and silhouetted, and then all the figures were wandering around. They were all dark figures, and an illuminated sky, and then all the fires that were smoldering and burning smoke all over the place.
The rain created something that nothing else could have done. What it did was it equalized everybody at that festival. Everybody was full of mud. Everybody was wet. Everybody was cold. Everybody was together. Everybody experienced the same thing at the same time and had to make it work. So I don't know how many people have told you that, but I thank the Lord for that rain.
And I remember desperately looking for a place to sleep and finally winding up actually sleeping on the stage. And I woke up just in time to hear Hendrix play the Star Spangled Banner. In fact, he woke me up.
People were even leaving during Hendrix's performance, and just seeing the people wandering off slowly in this, you know, sort of surrealistic scene. And hearing the Star Spangled Banner played in the manner that it was played, that's the way the festival ended for me. But there was a lot of work to do after that, but I kind of forgot about it at that moment, you know. I just took it in, smoked a joint, and relished in it, and said, we did it.
It looked like a Civil War battlefield, you know, and those old photographic plates they took right after the battlefield where you'd see dead bodies laying around and all the equipment that they left behind.
We knew we were in the middle of a financial disaster. We knew that some things had gone on that we could never make right.
I was at the bank in New York talking to a bunch of panicked and angry bankers. And Jim Mitchell, who had been charged with cleaning up the site, called me at the bank and said, they're going through the woods. My crew is going through the woods and they're finding bodies. And I said something like, oh my God, or, you know, whatever one would expect. It was pretty emotional. Joel and I were both at the bank, and it felt like our world had sort of collapsed.
One of the curious things to me was that the day of the festival, the first day, all the cops were saying, hey, there's 1 million people here. And about a day after the festival, some politicians were getting on arguing about whether it was a good idea or not. And it got down to like 750,000 people. And today when they talk about it, it's like 350,000. But I want to tell you that it wasn't just this little field that was covered with, there were people on a mile on either side of that field.
It seems like there were 185 million people there at that show. Everybody seems to have been there now, you know? Then there was, what, maybe 400,000? Something like that. But now when you speak to some, everybody's been there. And I'm surprised that the United States was able to function since everybody was at Woodstock.
It took me 15 years to stop being Artie Woodstock and to just be Artie again. I mean, when people talk to me, yeah, there is that thing. He did Woodstock. But now it's the fact that I'm Artie. You know, that's important.
When the festival was over, And all this trouble came down. The dead boy, the lawsuits, the pillorying in the press, the loss of money. The Yasgurs were steadfast friends. They didn't call and say, you didn't clean up this acre or that acre, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. They called up and said, look, anything we can do to help, we'd love to help.
I left the site, I guess, around noon on Monday, and one of the last helicopters was just leaving. The guy offered me a lift. And it was the first time I'd never seen it from the air, and I thought, you know, what a great idea to see it from the air. There were 50 or 60 kids left on the field, and they were collecting garbage. And I remember as the helicopter took off, I saw that they were dragging the garbage in bags and old clothes, and they were piling them in this huge peace symbol in the middle of the field. And that was the last image I had as we left. That was the first time I'd seen it from the air, and that was the image that stays with me always, is that that's what was left at the end of it.
Well, I don't think you can plan to have a Woodstock. If by that you mean a spontaneous mass gathering of tremendous energy and goodwill, at which people have a great time. I think you can offer it. You can set the framework up for it, but having it happen is it's a miracle.
If there is another Woodstock, I mean, if it were to happen if it were to happen in '94, I'll anticipate your question and say, would I do it? Yeah. Because having done it once, I mean, it was the seminal experience in my life. It was a major factor. Would I like to go do it again? Yeah, it won't be the same, but it was fascinating. I would love to walk on the stage and say, get off the towers. It's not a free concert, and I quit if anybody gives a good goddamn and call it done.
In 10 years, they would say, let's have a 10-year anniversary of Woodstock, and in 20 years, let's have a 20-year anniversary of Woodstock, and now the silver anniversary of Woodstock is coming up. And I guess I'd like to go on record to say that Woodstock that is historic and legendary is a Woodstock that happened as a miracle. It was a miracle. It happened because of the good vibes in planning it. It happened because of the dedication of everybody that worked on it. It happened because of the weather. It happened because all these variables came together. The time was right. Everybody agreed, the music, the piece, everything was just perfect for that. I don't think you could ever recreate Woodstock. If the 25th anniversary, and maybe by the time this airs, happens, it won't be a recreation of Woodstock, but a sort of a celebration, in appreciation of times when something like that could happen. But Woodstock was a singular thing, and I think that history has proven that it's unique. The unique aspect of that festival was so great that I believe it's now a word in a dictionary.
The cornerstone of our thinking was this concept of peace in music. And peace was not intended as some kind of code word for get out of Vietnam. Peace was a shorthand way of saying a weekend of freedom from whatever is bothering you. Just come to the country and have a nice time.
A lot of the elements that came together at Woodstock, a lot of the progressive elements in society that we've almost taken for granted in the subsequent decades, remind me of Woodstock and how new those ideas were. In fact, how they seem to almost have been born at that event, or at least recognized as important and widely held.
It's difficult recovering from something like that. It's a big burden to carry around for some people. It wasn't such a burden for me, but it was difficult to recover.
What was happening culturally was a generation flexing its muscle and shocking the world, because it gave the politicians a chance to see this is coming. They're going to be the ones that are going to vote. We better start considering what they're saying and listening to them.
It was just our karma. This was a show that, right from the outset, everybody put their good intentions and their good feelings in there, and when you have that, the karma comes back to you.
Rock and roll got very sophisticated very, very fast, but at that time there was not the kind of money that existed even a few months later. Woodstock inspired dreams of millions and millions and millions and millions and millions, and raised the price of the entire business, I'm afraid.